Hi, welcome to Brady's Blunders, where I show you the mistakes in my games, hoping you don't make the same ones in yours. This episode should come with a warning label, and the idea being that if you're an aspiring Q player and you think that once you become a one-don, that means you're going to stop making mistakes, or at least you won't string the bad mistakes together, like mistake after mistake, or certainly that if your opponent makes a mistake, you're definitely going to see it and be able to punish it. If these are things you believe that come at the low-down level, then this episode should shatter those illusions. This one's pretty bad. Right. All right, I'm continuing the game with Nick from right where we left off. And let's see, Nick played here, he peeped, and I answered. And then he played here, making shape, and again I answered. And then he played here, connecting out with his other group. And I should put connecting in quotes, because both Nick and I are very aware that this is a two-space extension and this is a knight's move. So the connection is nebulous. But when I looked at the board, I didn't see a clear way for me to be able to attack it right away, and I just decided to leave it there, hoping I could take advantage later. And this was the correct way of thinking. And I decided that since I've built this nice wall here, I needed to use it, and I should use it to attack these three stones. So I started with this, and I went ahead and created a co-shape, or I should say Nick and I created this co-shape. Nick moved up, and I extended, and then he played on top. So this will be the question for this episode. And although I've got a lot more to show than just this question, but let's go ahead and start here. You're black, you've decided you want to start a co. Where do you play next? Go ahead and pause if you like. Right. Well, I played here, which wasn't the best. And Nick took the ko, and I played here, which seems like a nice natural ko threat. White answered, and then I took, and black played here, threatening to cut off all of these stones. So, of course, I answered that. White took the ko, and then I played here, and white answered. And then I took the ko, and then Nick played up here as a ko threat, and I said, your ko threat isn't big enough. And I took. And Nick agreed and said, you know what, you're right, my ko threat wasn't big enough, and I'm going to help these stones. And then I connected on top. So did that sequence look reasonable to you? Because it actually contained, at least 5 mistakes. And let me go through them one by one. And I'll actually start with one that I won't even call a mistake. And that is the idea that I am rich. I have a ton of points along the right. I have some points along the top. And if I can just keep gathering points, I may have enough that this is a hard game for white. So I don't necessarily need to create complexities. And when I say create complexities, it's hard to get more complex than a mid-game ko. And it would be very reasonable for me just to extend from my thickness as far as I can. And this looks like a really reasonable move and one that simplifies the game. Of course, it would be so much better if I hadn't exchanged the probe, as I discussed in the last episode. But even now, it's still pretty good. That said, I can't say that starting the ko is wrong. And it's at least playable. And the reason I used what I used as the problem is both Nick and I had different opinions of what I should play at this point. And I played this move because I at least understood what happens if I win the ko. That means if I win the ko, I'm alive, and I can see how to win the ko in just one move. So it's understandable why I did it. It's just not the best. Nick thought I should cut here, My worry when I cut here is that he would have all sorts of co-threats just chasing this one stone. So I wasn't comfortable with giving him so many local co-threats. But it turns out the best way to play the co is here. And there's 3 reasons for that. First is actually this stone threatens to connect out on its own. And then black has nothing to worry about with the co. So if white plays here, then black can just extend out. And black is running towards this thickness, so we'll be perfectly safe. And this white group still looks heavy. So this would be a reasonable continuation for black. Second is if white says, I am going to contain you, then I can fight the co the same sort of way that I did before with 2 advantages. Number 1 is that I get an additional co-threat, and that's right here. So this is the second advantage of this approach. And when white answers, then I've already gained a move. I've gained 1 threat. But the third reason this variation is better is that I capture the co larger. So let's say white plays a co-threat I can ignore. Okay, I wouldn't ignore this co-threat, but let's say I could. And now I don't capture it with a first line stone. Now I capture the co with a 4th line stone. And yeah, actually this isn't growing the co. This move ends the co. White can't retake because then I can just play here and say, no, there's no co anymore. You're just captured. So that's why this move would have been best to start the co. Again, whether the co is a good idea or not is a separate question completely. Okay, back to the actual game where white captured and then I played here. This is all good. And white played here, and yep, this is when I need to defend, so this is all good. But then we look at this. This threatens to cut across white, that's true, but it's not a real threat. And let me show why. If white says to black, no, sorry, yours isn't a threat. Thanks for all the points. You know, I now have this whole lower left corner. Also, thank you for all the thickness, because my thickness here is great too. I don't just have the points. And so now, as a threat, the best black can do is this. And if white says, yeah, go ahead and make your panuki, and white comes out this way, even if this black group was fine, because white got so thick over here, this white group is going to have no trouble living. It's either going to be able to connect to the thickness or threaten to connect to the thickness and therefore make good shape. And it's going to have no problem. But it's actually much worse than that for black, because if you look at this black string, it's got no eyes and really no place to run anymore. The game is almost over. Black is in deep, deep trouble. So that's why it wasn't a threat. So missing this was bad move 1. A bad co-threat, bad move 2. Answering a bad co-threat, bad move 3. When white played this, it's actually a good co-threat. So ignoring it is bad move 4. This. Because if white captures here, and black says to white, you know, you were right to be concerned about these stones. It's pretty big. But really, how big is this, these incremental stones? Maybe 15 points? Not that big in the scheme of things. So because black had to go back and capture, now white has the initiative, sente, and can come and play a move like this. So let's look at it real quick. So black has gained something like 15 points in the area of B, but white has gained at least that with the capture of C. Corners are large, and this is at least an equal trade, and actually a good trade for white. But it's worse than that for black, because when white gets a stone like this, you remember this group A, and how for all the previous videos I've been talking about it as incredible thickness, and both sides need to be aware of it and use it or counter it. Well, with this approach, white would have countered it very well. And white's making points on the left, white's taking all the points in the upper right, and as a matter of fact, it's not even far-fetched to think of that A group as a target in the not-too-distant future. So at this point, the game would be really good for white. So when black captured, white needed to play there. So this was mistake 5, or rather this was mistake 5, because then black got both sides. And this comes back to the idea that I talked about in episode 3. So if you haven't seen it, please go back and watch that one, because it's about the attitude of Go. And the idea of if you make a plan and your opponent doesn't do anything to really disrupt the plan, then follow through on the plan. White chose to fight the Ko, and white chose to make this Ko threat. And when black ignored it, it's actually very important, a fighting spirit sort of thing, that white needs to go ahead and say, no, black, you're wrong. This was a Ko threat, and I'm going to push through, and I'm going to show you why your move is wrong. And letting black both win the Ko and come back and connect is not good. And that's why black goes into the next episode with a lead that I quickly gave away. So, what to learn from this? Number one, Kos are hard. And okay, there's some Kos that are easy. The half-point endgame Kos, those are pretty easy. And picnic Kos, the ones where it's only threatening one side. One side has everything to lose, the other side has nothing to lose. Those are pretty easy too. But a Ko like this is difficult, because to do it properly, you need to take account of a lot of things. You need to know what the endgame position is, or the end position is if black wins. You need to be aware of what the end position is if white wins. And you need to calculate the difference between those two for the value of the Ko. You need to know the strength and the weakness of all the groups in the area if black wins. You need to know the strength and weakness of all the groups in the area if white wins. You need to count the threats for black. You need to count the threats for white. So Kos are hard. And the other takeaway is that you're going to make a Ko threat and the opponent ignores, you have to go ahead and play through that Ko threat. Well, until the next one, see ya.